love you. Get off the remote. See it? Look now. Who you talking to? Want to hear some music? Huh? Want to hear some music? Eh? Come on. Want to hear Ned and Dee favorite song? Huh?
Hey, honey. Hey there, honey.
Baby, don't you look at me that way.
Let's boogie with it.
Much I can't take.
Stand up. Anytime I let you down, you want to go over there.
Oh. Go get his food. You look at me. Come on, sit right here. Come on. Come on. Come on. Hashi. 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 Look. Look. Can we get hot dogs too? How come that stink? Where are the people at?
Some people are closer to that consciousness than others. There's vibrations, there's thoughts, there's contact, and some people are just in tune with that. And when they allow it to happen, they can hear and see and help those spirits pass on, move on, continue on, or give them a message or take a message from them. That definitely could happen.
What was that? I thought about it. I guess I'm taking too long. Everything looked deserted, but yet still, it's gonna rain. No, not today. You know Boss Man ain't having it. Look at him. should still be raining. Ah, forget it. Yeah, I don't answer it. I'm too scared to go too many places.
Sorry, got disconnected there. So, why'd you come back? Wait a second. You're here to see Dana, you dog. What, you gonna get back together again? What was that? Is there someone there with you?
No doubt. Ouch! 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 I don't appreciate you hitting me. Look, you don't have to hit me. You remember it don't go in your mouth. Party. How you doing, man? What's up? Sorry I didn't really know what's going on. Let you see, little man. He over here trying. Come on. Come on. Come on. Say hello. Say hello. No, right there. Look over there. Look at the screen. The TV. Look at the TV. Right there, the TV. Right there. You don't know? Ah, gotcha. Okay. Jump up. Jump down. All right. Good. Look at that. That's taken care of. Turn this off. Put this up. You say in this? I'm quite here. Oh, you know where my Bluetooth at? No, my Bluetooth. What you mean? I'm in there, and that's like, woman. See, this is why we can't be friends. Ouch! Why you poke me with that? Why you poke me with that? What is wrong? I'm telling you, this game know how to play with your fear. That's why I got this one right. I ain't that stupid. That's why I ain't even playing it on here. I don't got that thing going. I can't do it. gonna help me, Kashi? Kashi, you gonna help me? You what? I don't know what that is. Can you tell me what that means? That means we are shadows and shadows and shadows. Shadow flickering, barricade walls. You close your eyes tight, like remember which one was you. Damn. Alright, I was just over here. Straight on, run. Run, Forrest, run. Alright, going down that far. Now let's take this one. Alright, okay. Got it. Turn this TV back on. Don't put that in the room. Take his finger in come here, give him a kiss. Your name be kiss. Your name be kiss. Bye-bye. 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 Hey, how you doing, Shadow? I ain't scared. And I really don't know where to go. Be truthful. What's on that grill? Hey, you can't even get to it. Somebody did. They got grill sizzling over there. And a pot. need to book malls for me and stations for thousand in the street, 5,000 in the city, 40 million, 5 billion grand. We shall start making some sense. So far, it's not really all that spooky as I thought it would be. But it do have some crazy sounds. Ain't nothing really happening. You're so much better than you know. Darling, bring you home. This looks suspect. Oh, man.
Maximum volume.
Whatever I gotta do, I'll do.
You put me in an awkward situation.
It picks me up, don't wanna come down. You got me spinning all around. Yeah, you need to know I got somebody, but you're beautiful. But still, it ain't that kind of party now. What am I supposed to do? You want me when I want you in? How can I want you? I can't help my feelings. Oh no. Now what am I supposed to do when I want you in? I know I'm selfish, but how can I want you? Well. We'll be butterflies. I guess I'll see you next lifetime. That sounds so divine. See you next lifetime. Guess I will now. I guess I'll see you next lifetime. When and why? See, it ain't like I'm wrong dreaming. Boy, get me wrong. 'Cause every time I see you, let me know just how strong that my love is for my baby. But emotions just don't lie. Well, I know I'm a lot woman, but not enough to divide. Oh, now what am I supposed to do when I want you in? How can I want you myself when I'm already somewhere? Oh, next lifetime. You know I wanna stay away. I guess I'll see you next lifetime. I'm so confused now. Now what am I supposed to do when I want you in? Want you in? But how can I want you for myself when I'm already somewhere? I guess I'll see you next lifetime. Already, I'm gonna be there. I guess I'll see you next lifetime. I'm gonna look for you. Now what am I supposed to do when I want you in? Want you in? But how can I want you for myself when I'm already somewhere? Oh, baby. Oh, baby. I guess I'll see you next lifetime. Now what am I supposed to do you want me to do? Want you in? Want you in? But how can I want you for myself when I'm already somewhere? Don't this lifetime. 'Cause what we got is so divine. Next time I'll make you mine. Oh.
Hello, hello. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, if I should die tomorrow, oh, please let there be light. No, no need for sorrow. Let's just make love until the morning light. to remember me. I want you to remember me.
How you doing?
Hey, my phone dead. That's why I didn't call.
Okay.
You sleeping?
Nah. He in the room with Angela.
Every time my phone rings, it's money call, it's money call.
Time that door go off. I say every time that door rung. Hello? I put and put. He said connected to controller. Nah, I'm gaming, but I'm trying to fix this. Connected to controller. He said connected. Output. Oh, thank you.
Can I go back there and see you?
Yeah.
I want you to remember me. I want you to remember me.
My bad. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. See, stuff like this, like, how's that spinning? Like, who was here? You scared me. You just scared me. That's one of the reasons why I'm not playing. That's one of the reasons why I don't got that VR thing going, because that's what this is.
Oh, okay.
I don't like to be spooked. But I'm playing a spooky game.
Okay.
I know you just said that, yeah. But that's the best thing that hold it. Like the other tapes that I use to hold it, it still keep the liquid out. And when I put the two pads up underneath it and tape it, yeah, it keep it from bumping, but it still don't keep it from moving.
Okay.
And that's what I need. Yeah, it's almost like the thing they use on for the IVs.
Yeah,
so it keep it from moving.
I got a friend of mine to give them to me.
Well, yes, if she could get more until that time, that would be perfect.
Okay, all right. I'll try harder.
All right, Mama. Oh, it don't lock at the bottom. It's all right. I did it. It's
Every
okay.
time my phone rings, it's money call, it's money call, money call.
Afraid to make a choice, cause I'm scared of the things that I might be missing. Running too fast to stop to listen. It's gotta slow down, fade. I gotta show my face. It's been elusive for so long. Freedom is my mistake. You step out on faith. It's gotta show my face.
Be right back. Be right back.
You should have me
Enjoy the music for a second.
look what I have found. Strength, courage, and wisdom. It's been inside of me all along. Strength, courage, and wisdom inside of me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I close my eyes and I think of all the things that I want to see. 'Cause I know now that I've opened up my heart, I know that anything I want can be. So let it 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 be. Courage and wisdom is inside of me all along. Strength, courage, and wisdom. It's been inside of me, yeah, all along. Now every day I'm grateful. Strength, courage, and wisdom to find, yeah. Strength, courage, and wisdom inside of me. I found it in me. I found it finally.
The thing for his stomach.
So does it make you? When you talk to her like you know somebody. Talk to your mama. Don't get smart, but if you have a heart, baby, just like you would with your daughter. 'Cause everything you do or
what happens when you die, what happens to your mind, it's for eternity sort of thing. You don't remember everything that happened before you, or you just sort of popped into life like that. So I think you kind of get sad if you think about it, but you think about it like everything's going to happen to everyone eventually. There's nothing you can do about it, it's inevitable. I don't think anyone really knows, I don't think we'll ever know until it happens. I like to think that maybe something happens and we die and do something, I don't know, or like the human race will go on to, I don't know.
Somebody's baby, she's somebody's sister, she's somebody's mama. It doesn't matter if she's wearing a mini skirt or a business suit. Whether she's 25 or 99, treat it the way your mama taught you to. She could be the queen, she does. She could be a school teacher, a homemaker or a lawyer. I think it's good for your karma if when you talk to her, yeah, talk to your mama. Oh, don't smooth, have a heart to heart with, just like you would with your daughter. 'Cause everything you do or say, yeah, you got to live with it every day. She's somebody's baby, she's somebody's sister, she's somebody's mama. Now let's keep it real. Nothing in the world will ever exist without its opposites. There has to be a sun and a moon, a man and a woman, and that's just the way it is. Humanity's divided, and everybody's fighting. How do we restore the peace? Mother Earth is hurting, and everybody's searching for that sanity.
This is really how it was.
Shit wasn't cool. Fuck you throw me over here for?
Cause I've been redeemed from your anguish and pain. A miracle child, I'm floating on a cloud. Cause the words that come from your mouth, you're the first to hear. Speak words of beauty and you'll be there. No matter what anybody says, what matters most is what you think of yourself. You wanna heal your body. You have to heal your heart, yeah. Whatsoever you sow, you will reap. The choice is yours, no matter what it is. To choose life is to choose to forgive. You don't have to try and hurt him or break his pride. Just shake that weight off and you'll be ready to fly. One shot to your heart without breaking your skin. No one has the power to hurt you like your friend. Thought it would never change, but as time moved on, that ugly duckling grew up to be a swan. And now your chest burns and your back aches, because now the years are showing up on your face. But you'll never be happy and you'll never be whole until you see the beauty in growing old. You wanna heal your body. You have to heal your heart. Whatsoever you sow, you will reap. Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. You wanna heal your body. You have to heal.
I'm standing in line for this, and all of a sudden, I've been told that the dark queens, they see your light, they're jealous of it, and they may lash out at you. When I sense that, I try to give some of the like over the top people. I don't even give them eye contact, and that usually works. They'll just keep walking. Yeah, just don't give me eye contact.
Choice you made. You can't give or you can't take. You can fly, 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 fly. You can fly, 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 fly. You can fly, 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 fly.
You're my baby, my lover, my lady, all mine. You make me want you. It drives me crazy. I feel like you were made just for me, babe. Tell me if you feel the same way, 'cause it just feels so right. I don't wanna waste no time. If I had to choose, I know I'm gonna always choose to be with you. 'Cause girl, don't you know? Girl, don't you know you're so beautiful? I wanna give all my love to you, girl. Not just tonight, but the rest of your life. I wanna be always here by your side. Girl, don't you know you're so beautiful? I wanna give all my love to you, girl. Not just tonight, but the rest of your life. I wanna be always here by your side. When you're not here, you don't know how much
much I miss you. The whole time on my mind is how much I'm gonna give to make you feel so good, like you know I could. Tell me if you feel the same way, 'cause it just feels I don't wanna waste no time. Girl, if I had to choose, I know I'm gonna always choose to be with you. Girl, don't you know? Girl, don't you know you're so beautiful? Yeah, babe, I wanna give my love to you, girl. Not just tonight, but for the rest of your life. I wanna be always here by your side. Girl, don't you know you're so beautiful? I wanna give all my love to you, girl. Whoa, I wanna be
Alright, I'm back.
Baby, don't you know you're so beautiful? Oh, baby, don't you know you're so beautiful? Don't you, baby, don't you know you're so beautiful? Oh, baby, don't you know you're so beautiful?
me not to go this way.
Because you never know what life is gonna take you if you can't change where you've been. But today, I have the opportunity to choose. Here I am now looking at 30 and I got so much to say. Gotta get this off of my chest, I gotta let it go stay. I was always too concerned about what everybody would think. But I will live for everybody, gotta live a life for me. I've reached the fortune, but I rolled up my life. There's nothing gonna happen unless I decide to be the best that I can be. I choose to be authentic in everything I do. My past don't dictate who I am. I choose. I've been through some painful things I thought that I would never make it through. Filled up with shame from the top of my head to the soul of truth. I put myself in so many chaotic circumstances. By the grace of God, I've been given so many second chances. Today I decided to let it all go. I'm dropping these bags, I'm making room for my show. I choose to be the best that I can be. I choose to be authentic in everything. I choose. My past don't dictate who I am. I choose. And every day I have the opportunity to choose. From this day forward, I'm going to be exactly who I am. I don't need to change the way that I live just to get a man. No, even had a talk with my mama and I told her the day I'm grown. This day forward, every decision that I make will be my own. And I choose to be the best that I can be. I choose to be courageous in everything I do. My
Alright, I'm getting ready to get off in 30 more minutes. Let's see.
My house doesn't have a basement. A lot of houses that don't have basements have crawl spaces instead, which are basically a layer of space under the lower level of a house with a height of no more than about 5 feet, usually used for storage. It started on a night like any other. I had classes the next morning, so I had to be in bed early. My room is on the first floor, and the crawl space is right below my room. After turning off the TV at like 11, I started hearing noises below me. Actually, it sounded like it was coming from right under my bed. My parents and brother were all asleep by now, so calling for any of their attention would be a little obnoxious at this point. It took a little courage, but I got on the carpet on my knees and looked under the bed, hoping I wouldn't see a rodent or any other kind of creature. There was nothing, though, so I got back into bed. As I got back into bed, though, the sound started up again. It was kind of a rough push and pull kind of sound. It sounded like something being done deliberately. I once again got on my knees on the side of the bed and looked underneath. There was definitely nothing under there, though. Oddly enough, every time I got out of bed, the sound stopped. I went to get my dad, and he took a look under the bed too. Figures there were no sounds now, though. He told me he'd check the crawl space the next day to see if one of the pipes were leaking or something. I didn't even think of it being something in the crawl space. The rest of that night it was quiet, so I fell asleep with ease. When I got home from class the next day, I spotted something sticking out from under my bed. I pulled it out. It was a bag full of old papers from like elementary school. I planned on asking my mom why she would put that in my room, but I figured I'd just throw it back down in the crawl space and forget about it. Our crawl space has a entry door inside of our garage. My dad tends to leave the garage door open a lot during the summer months. This was so he could work in there without having the lights on while also getting some fresh air. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to sounds coming from below my room. Not my bed this time. For some reason, the sounds were especially clear this night. I knew now something had to be in the crawl space. After turning on my bedside lamp, I ran to get my dad out from bed. He was a bit irritated that I'd woken him up. He led me down to the garage and to the crawl space door. He opened the door and grabbed the flashlight that hung next to the door. As we looked inside of the crawl space, however, we noticed something strange. Light. Across the other side of the area. Light was seeping in from above. But that made no sense. There weren't supposed to be any holes in the place. My dad crouch walked his way to the hole. And then he screamed. Hearing my dad scream with such fear and horror was the most disturbing thing I'd ever witnessed. I didn't know what he saw, but he screamed at me to open the garage door and get out of the house. I listened without asking questions. I stood in the driveway waiting. I heard a commotion inside of the house, including a scream from my mom. 5 minutes later, my dad and older brother came outside, holding a stranger in their grips. 5 minutes later, a police car pulled up to the house. Neighbors soon started coming outside to see what the commotion was. Let me explain what happened. When my father got to that hole in the ceiling of the crawl space, he realized there was a giant hole cut open right under my bed. As he looked through it, he saw a masked man looking down at him. As my dad grabbed at the man's arms through the hole, he screamed for my older brother's help, who luckily came to my dad's aid. Without him, my dad could have easily been killed, because that man was carrying a handgun. When I was 21, still living in my parents' house, my bedroom was actually supposed to be considered an extra room. It wasn't built with the intention of being a bedroom, more so a kind of downstairs storage room. However, I was the youngest, so I got the worst room. My 2 older brothers had already moved out by this point, and I was finishing up for college. It was winter break, however. My dad was on a business trip, and my mom was in another state with friends. They're the kind of parents who you never see around. They've been like that since we were kids. My room happens to attach to the crawl space of our house. There's a little pull-out door in the wall. When I was little, my brothers always teased me and said there were aliens or monsters in the crawl space. Sometimes as a kid, I'd get scared by the littlest of noises coming from inside the wall next to my bed. Eventually, I outgrew that fear, obviously. I was chilling in my room, just trying to finish up all the work for my classes, and I heard some muffled noise coming from the crawl space, like literally beyond the wall right next to my bed. It wasn't any kind of thumping or tapping or anything. It just sounded like some kind of sound that would come from the person's mouth. Of course, my heart started racing as I started freaking out over it. Given that I was home alone, I couldn't just call for my huge, intimidating dad to go in there. So I opened the door to the crawl space, and with my phone's flashlight, just aimed it in every direction in the crawl space while still standing by the doorway. I wasn't sure exactly what I was looking for, but after not being able to see anything or anyone through the doorway, I contemplated going deeper into the crawl space. But just then, there was a voice. After nearly having a heart attack, I realized it was just one of those old talking Bubba toys. I didn't know what could have caused it to go off and start speaking though. I was guessing it was deep in some old bag of toys somewhere, and something was putting pressure on the trigger button. I waited by the door for the talking to stop, and when it finally did, I shut the attic door again and got back in my bed. When the time came for me to go to sleep, I turned off my laptop and the light and rolled on my side. It wasn't long after that I heard the talking Bubba go off again inside the crawl space. Now that I knew what the sound was, it seemed much clearer. This was the last straw now. I had to get that toy out from whatever bag it was sitting in, or it would probably be going off all night. I went back to the crawl space door, and this time actually went inside. I followed the sounds of the toy's voice. As I got to the big brown paper bag that seemed to be containing it, I saw two arms come out from the dark. Two arms that were stretched out forward. There was a horrifying, deep scream that accompanied them. It was being lunged at. I screamed as I ran to the crawl space door and slammed it shut. It had a lock on it, thank God. A couple seconds after locking the door, there were bangs on the door that consistently came about every 2 seconds. The door didn't show any signs of giving, but I didn't stick around to find out if it would. I was upstairs already on the phone with the police, and I did notice the banging stopped downstairs. The police told me to wait either inside a locked room or outside in a safe place like a car or a neighbor's house. I didn't want to be in the house anymore until the cops arrived, so I took the spare keys to my car from the key ring and went to sit in my car. I had a view of the back section of my house from the street, however, and noticed the door on the side of our house was open. It was the outside crawl space door. It was completely wide open. It suddenly made sense how there could be someone in there. The outside door must have been left unlocked by my dad by mistake. I sat in my car telling 911 to hurry up before the intruder could escape. I didn't see anyone leave through the door, but for all I knew, they already had left. The cop car finally came roaring down the road with its lights on and stopped in front of my house. I got out of the car and called at him to follow me to the door. I pointed and said, "In there," and he went inside with his flashlight. I peeked my head in there the whole time, helping out with the flashlight too. I made sure he didn't miss anything. I even suggested that he search any big boxes or bags, and he did. The officer was surprisingly patient and polite towards my demands given the situation. He came out after a few minutes of searching and assured me the crawl space was empty. Whoever was in there left in a hurry. The crawl space door could only be locked with a key or from the inside, so I asked the officer to wait there while I went inside and locked the door from the inside. As I was in the crawl space again, alone, I couldn't help but shake the feeling that I was being watched as I hurried back to the door as well. The officer left a few minutes after, and I tried to get to sleep, but I couldn't. I was awake all night until the sun came up, just worrying about someone still being in that crawl space. Luckily, no one ever broke into it again, but I guess I wouldn't call it breaking in, since the door was unlocked. It was 2016. I I had just signed a lease to move into my first house alone. It was a fixer-upper starter home for sure, but the neighborhood wasn't bad at all, really. By the first day, I had the house layout memorized. By the third day, I was settled in. However, by the fourth day, I started to hear some weird house noises. There was a small upstairs where the 2 bedrooms and a bathroom were. The first floor was just the living room, dining room, and kitchen. When I was upstairs, I never heard the sounds. However, when I was downstairs, I'd start to hear noises come from below the floor at later hours of the night. There was a small basement, technically, but it was just one little room meant to serve as a laundry room. I went down there to see if the noise could be coming from down there. There was no one down there in that room. I could still hear noises coming from inside the wall. I felt around the wall to see if there was any kind of hollowness. In fact, there was. That meant there was some kind of room on the other side. I looked to the corner of the basement, where there was a small opening that went deeper than the rest of the room. I went over to look at it, what I assumed to be just a tight space that could be used for storage, and learned there was actually a door in that tiny opening. A door that seemed to lead to some kind of crawl space area. I opened the door, which just barely cleared the tiny opening, and looked inside. But it was way too dark to go in there. Plus, whatever the noise was seemed to stop. I could tell just based off the door in front of the space, however, that the ceiling was just tall enough to walk under, maybe with a slight crouch in their step. There was no way I was looking around there at night anyway, so I shut that door, went upstairs, and unlocked the basement door just in case, you know. I called it a night shortly after. The next few days, things were normal. One night I heard a sound or two when I was in the basement doing laundry, but I was starting to think it was just some kind of noises that had to do with the boiler system or whatever. The next night, however, while I was in the living room, I heard thumps hitting the floor. 3 distinct thumps, actually. Now my adrenaline was rushing, as I was positive I had someone in my house. I went into defense mode and grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I had and stormed downstairs. I tried to make myself angry as I approached the crawlspace door. I turned on my flashlight, opened the door, and started screaming with anger, or what I wanted to seem like anger. But really, I was shaking in my own skin as I entered that dark, cold crawl space. It was completely empty except for what seemed to be 2 empty boxes. I must have done a complete 360, analyzing the space at least 5 times, and I knew for a fact there wasn't anything or anyone in there. Then, however, something broke the absolute silence. It was a sound that was coming from no further than like 20 feet away from me. It was the sound of breathing. In a panic, I looked in the direction of the breathing, and was horrified to see something standing in the corner of the space. I didn't know what to think, but I knew it couldn't be a real person, because I'd looked around at least 5 times and saw nobody in there just a second ago. As I stood there, frozen, I started to feel like the figure answered to me. That's when I ran for the crawl space door. When I made it outside, I looked around for something to block the door with. I found nothing, so I ran upstairs and locked the door. That night, I went to sleep at my parents' house, and the next day, I harassed the landlord to let me out of the lease, given what I had just experienced. It took a lot of arguing, but I managed to get out of that house within the same week. All that week, however, I stayed out in the basement, but I did continue to hear noises from down below when I was in the living room. I'm currently in a predicament, and quite frankly, I don't know what to do. I'll start from the beginning. 5 years ago, my next-door neighbor Charlie, or Charles as we call him, informed us of his 14-year-old son's disappearance. He reported it to the police, it was on the news, it was everywhere. Me and my wife felt absolutely awful, and always offered to help them out in any way we could. As the years passed with no word of their son, we assumed they eventually came to terms with it, and realized the worst had probably happened. Me and my wife never had the nerve to ask if the body ever turned up. Occasionally, Charles and his wife would invite me and my wife over for a barbecue during the warmer months. We noticed neither of the two were ever the same since their son had gone missing. Charles' wife, Kathy, was always quieter and more reserved, and Charles just seemed more awkward and nervous, both understandable to a certain extent. Fast forward a couple of years later to just last week. Charles came over to me when I was taking out the garbage and asked to borrow a shovel. Without hesitation, I ran to get him my best shovel, not asking why he needed it. He thanked me and said he just had to do some work in his backyard and he'd get it back to me by tomorrow. He then disappeared into his backyard. I went inside, and when I was by one of my upstairs windows that has a clear view into Charlie's backyard, I could see he was digging out a really big hole in the ground. He seemed to be struggling a bit. He's 56 after all. I figured I'd go grab my second shovel and help him out. As I entered his backyard and called his name, he looked up from what he was doing, dropped my shovel, and hurried over to me, saying, No, it's okay, Tim, I got it. Please, just leave. I said, What's wrong with you? It's not a big deal. Mainly because of his bizarre reaction. He told me I will not allow you to use that shovel in my backyard, and then pointed to the gate as if I were a dog. I was so taken aback by how he was acting that I just left without saying another word. I went upstairs to spy on him through the window. He was digging the hole for at least another half hour. When it finally looked like he was done, he started looking around, like up high at neighboring houses as if to check and make sure nobody was watching. Then, before I could think to hide, he spotted me at my window. All I could do at that point was casually walk away. He's up to something, and I wanted to find out what. I continued to look at his backyard every so often, but he wasn't digging anymore. I figured he knew I was watching now and would wait until it was dark out. And I was exactly right. At 1:30 in the morning, I heard the sound of a shovel hitting the dirt outside. It was too dark to see anything from my window now, so I snuck outside quietly and looked over the fence in the backyard. I could see him digging loud and clear now. When he went inside his house, I took that opportunity to sneak into his backyard and take a look at what was in the hole he was digging. The moonlight alone revealed a small piece of a black garbage bag protruding from the dirt at the bottom of the hole. I looked at his back door and back at the hole. I did this 3 more times, deciding whether or not to see what was in the bag. In the end, I decided to run back. It was a good thing I did, because he came back outside seconds later. But he wasn't digging. In fact, he disappeared to the other side of his house and didn't come back. I went back into my house and quietly got back into bed, trying not to wake up my wife. The next day, the first thing I did was look out my window to see that the hole in the ground was completely patched up in Charles' backyard. I also noticed that his SUV was parked in the street now instead of his driveway. I don't know what happened throughout the rest of that night, but I'm disturbed to think that what was at the bottom of that hole might have been his son's body. For all I know, he dug up that hole to remove whatever he had previously buried down there and drive it somewhere else to dump it. This is all speculation, call me crazy if you want. I haven't told anyone, not even my wife. And quite frankly, I don't know what to do. Charles never gave me back my shovel. I'm not going to ask him for it. In fact, he's got a ring on the other side. It's so disturbing how to happen. I by coincidence happened to look out my window across to Charlie's house.
Well, I did that
and
for
caught
a
him
reason,
standing at
so
one
I
of his
could end
windows
that
looking
part.
into mine.
I didn't have to go over
When
there.
he saw me, he shut his blinds, and that was in the middle of the day. I have no idea what to do, but I'm honestly terrified.
That's a lot of blood.
I've lived in 3 houses in my life, 2 with my family and my current house by myself. We lived in the first house for the first 15 years of my life, and the second house the next 7 before I moved out to my current home. This experience happened in my first home when I was 15, within the last few months of my family living in that house. I don't remember my family ever being really friendly with the neighbors. In fact, there were 2 kids living next door with their dad that me and my brother had only talked to maybe once or twice our entire lives, as bizarre as that is. Though we did know both of their names, Eric and Todd. One day, me and my brother, who was 5 years younger than me, were outside playing basketball in the driveway. That was when one of the two boys next door, Todd, came outside and walked over to us, initiating a conversation. I don't remember what we said to each other, quote unquote, but I remember the first thing that he asked us was if it was true that we were vegan. As the older brother, I did most, if not all, of the talking. Todd was probably the same age as me. I never actually asked. By the end of the conversation, he invited me to come with he and his brother to shoot BB guns by the river in the woods down the road the next day. I agreed since it was the weekend and I didn't have anything going on anyway. My little brother asked if he could come at the last second, not under the assumption that he was automatically invited as well. Todd said yeah and then walked away. Late the next day, around an hour before dusk, Eric and Todd rang the doorbell. We were quick to answer the door because our parents didn't know that we were going out to shoot BB guns. Walking down the sidewalks with Todd and Eric decked out in camo gear and carrying a duffel bag of BB guns was really strange. The level of seriousness these two clearly had in this was really weird to me and my brother, and we kept meeting eyes, holding in our laughter a couple of times because of it. We got to the woods having spoken very few words. I could already tell these two were kids of few words. Maybe why we hadn't met them officially until that point. Todd dropped the duffel bag onto the ground and unzipped it, while Eric aggressively snapped a branch off a tree and threw it into the river. Me and my brother looked at each other again, this time not finding it as funny. Todd pulled out a couple of guns and handed them to me and my brother, and that's when Todd dropped the bomb and told us they were real guns. Eric grabbed a loaded gun from the bag and began firing at trees across the river. When I realized he wasn't joking about the guns being real, I was in a mix of anger and confusion. I grabbed the gun from my brother's hands and placed both of them back in the bag. I told them we weren't comfortable with this and had to leave. Eric stopped firing, and they both looked at us with expressions that seemed half angry. One of the two boys yelled a curse word at us as we were walking away. I always had a feeling these two were bad kids, but this confirmed it. I told my brother not to speak to them anymore for the remainder of our time living there. We told our parents at the dinner table that night that they were really weird kids, but we didn't mention the gun thing. I woke up that night to a breeze of cold air hitting me in the face. My window was open all the way. I felt something hard press up against the back of my head as I was looking out the window, and somebody behind me going, "Shh." Somehow I didn't scream or jump, I just stayed calm. I was able to understand what was going on surprisingly quickly. I heard Todd's voice in a whisper behind my head. He told me if I ever told anybody, especially his dad, about the guns or the visit, he would come back and kill me and my entire family. I replied in a quiet, shaky voice, "Okay." He pushed my head with his gun before leaving through my window. Every night thereafter for months, I would catch either Todd or Eric at a certain window of their house, looking into either my or my brother's room. Their behavior became more and more strange as we got closer to the date of our move. Just a week before we moved, a rock was thrown at my window one night at like 1 a.m. I opened my window and saw Todd aiming a pistol up at the window, and feeling like I was about to die, I dove for the ground, only to hear the two boys crack up in laughter. I heard one of them refer to me as a fucking retard. There were two other instances that week where the two would harass either me or my brother, and ultimately I couldn't think of a more perfect time for us to have moved and gotten out of there. After all these years, neither me nor my brother told anybody about the boys or their threats. All I know is those two boys were trouble, and it was a good thing we got out of there when we did. At the time I'm writing this happened 2 weeks ago. I've always hated just about all of my neighbors. I'm fresh out of college and I'm living on my own, but that comes at a price. I'm living in a really shitty area, the only place I can afford a house. So I'm not bound to have the ideal neighbors. The neighbors on one side always have their music blasting, while the neighbors on the other side are the creepiest people I've ever met in my life. It's two people living next door. One woman in her 60s who's not friendly at all and honestly doesn't seem all there, and a slightly younger woman who has some kind of severe mental disabilities. I have no idea what the relationship is between the two. I would commonly be sitting on my front porch when I'd look over next door and see the older woman holding the younger woman back as she'd be having some kind of freak-out episode. She'd have her arms crossed and she'd quickly rock back and forth while screaming and making noises. Sometimes she'd even look over and point at me and mumble stuff to the other woman. It's quite disturbing, actually. Sometimes I even go inside when I get too uncomfortable. Anyway, it was a night like any other. I had to go to bed early for work in the morning. However, the next-door neighbors were making an unusual amount of noise. I could hear the deranged woman screaming and throwing a fit as the older woman yelled in distress. This went on for about an hour, and I couldn't take it anymore. I marched over to the house next door and banged on the door. The older woman answered and greeted me with a "What the hell do you want?" I asked as politely as I could to keep the noise down. In response, she raised her eyebrows and tilted her head down, clearly annoyed by my request. Just then, the younger woman entered the living room, screaming, "How dare you," repeatedly. The older woman held her back from approaching me, and then slammed the door in my face. I had no idea what just happened, but I felt like I didn't accomplish what I came there for. I walked back to my bed in defeat. However, I realized they had finally gone silent next door. I was able to get some sleep at last. Well, I woke up, feeling like the night went way too fast. I looked at my clock and saw that it was only 3 in the morning. My head fell back into the pillow in relief, but pretty soon, I thought I could hear something come from downstairs. I got out of my bed and went over to my door just to make sure I wasn't hearing things. When I didn't hear any other sounds, I went back to bed. I woke up once again to a dark room. Only 20 minutes had passed since I'd fallen back asleep. I didn't know what could have woken me up, though. And then I heard. I panicked and tried to find my phone on my bedside desk as a source of light, but when I found it, I didn't dare turn the light on. I looked around the dark room in silence, trying to find some kind of dark figure in the room. I looked at every corner of the room, and even though it was so dark, I could tell there wasn't anybody standing there. This time I heard where it was coming from. I turned to the edge of my bed and saw a black shadowy circle-like object right at the edge of the wooden wall of my bed. When the light of my phone revealed that black object to be the face of the deranged woman from next door, she screamed like the lunatic she was. She screamed as if she were a vampire in the light. I screamed as well. I screamed as I clumsily ran for the door and tripped halfway, looking back to see the woman following me. I slammed the bedroom door behind me and ran all the way downstairs, where I locked the door leading to the upstairs. I called the cops as the woman pounded on the door, screaming incomprehensible things. When the cops showed up, I told them the woman lives next door, and that she was mentally insane. The older woman from next door came over after hearing all the commotion and spoke with the cops, pleading with them to let her go, but they insisted they had to take her in for at least the night. One of the officers asked me if I wanted to press charges, and as he asked this, the older woman gave me the most evil, hateful stare imaginable. I chose not to press charges, but her stare didn't change. The officers drove the ill woman away, while the older woman continued to stare at me as she walked back to her house. 5 minutes later, I saw her get in her car and drive away. These two still live next to me. I'm seriously considering moving out because the creepy woman next door makes it clear she despises me. And I've concluded that the mentally ill woman is not only terrifying, but dangerous as well. It was my first year at university. I had just finished unpacking all of my stuff into my room, and my family had just left. Later on that same day, my roommate finally arrived, and right from the get-go, I knew this kid was the most socially inept person I'd ever met. I introduced myself as Dan, sticking out my arm for a handshake. He paused, looked down at my arm as if he didn't understand at first, then laughed and went, "Oh," and gave me an almost dead fish handshake. I had to ask him for his name since he didn't even tell me when we shook hands. He was Dale. I tried to make small talk, but he just answered my questions with yes or no's, occasionally awkwardly laughing or smiling. Within minutes, we were both just sitting on our beds, on our laptops, not talking to each other. I was upset and planned on requesting to be placed with a different roommate. Anyone would be better than Dale. I thought Dale was just a really awkward kid, but I soon learned he was much more than just that. I met some of the other kids on my floor, and they seemed cool, so that was good. I came back to my dorm after looking around campus the first night, to find Dale still in the same position he was in when I left. I said, "What's up, Dale?" and he didn't answer. Not to my surprise. It was 9:30, I didn't have anything to do, so I turned out the lamp on my side of the room and went to bed. I didn't actually fall asleep anytime soon, though. Dale was on his laptop until 3 in the morning. When he finally closed his laptop, I fell asleep pretty quickly, but I woke up within the hour. The blinds to our room had been opened, and the moonlight now creeping into the room made everything visible, including Dale, sitting on the side of his bed, looking at me. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and said, "Dale, what the hell are you doing?" He whispered back, "Sorry," and laid down. The next morning, I woke up to find Dale had already gotten up. It felt like it was the first time he left the room. It was a Saturday. The first Saturday of the year, meaning orientation and all the campus festivities. During the orientation, as my group was walking by the school gardens, I heard a couple of students ahead of me saying, "What is that kid doing in there?" I saw who they were talking about. It was Dale, literally sitting in the dirt behind a patch of bushes, rubbing the bark of a tree with his hand. The orientation leader didn't notice, otherwise I'm sure she would have said something. I just walked by not saying anything, eventually telling the two kids I overheard that he was my roommate as a way to start a conversation and maybe make some friends. They apologized for me. None of us really knew if it was appropriate to laugh or not, but we did. I made friends with those two kids, and we made plans to get together that night. I also learned when I got back to my dorm that the school found another roommate for me. Things seemed to be turning around quickly for the better. I left the room that night to go meet up with the two kids I met. And when I got back, Dale was sitting on the desk chair facing the door. I said, "Oh, hey, what's up?" He said nothing, very matter-of-factly. I sat down on my bed and opened my laptop, and realized I forgot to lock it. I also realized that all of my emails had been opened. Emails I was pretty sure I didn't even read, and a bunch of folders of mine had been opened. Dale must have snooped through my laptop. When I asked him if he did, he responded no, very loudly, half a second after I even finished my question. I could read him like a book. This creepy kid was literally going through my computer when I was out. I knew he did it, but I didn't pursue it. I was ready to go to bed, so as I went into my bed to look for my pajamas, I felt like my clothing had all been moved around as well. I knew I'd be out of there forever by tomorrow, so I didn't say anything. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of a zipper. I sat up and saw Dale on the ground, going through my bag. I turned the lamp on, this time confronting him about it. He played dumb, saying, "I think you have my toothbrush by mistake." It was the closest thing to wits that he'd shown up until that point. Still, I knew he was lying, and I knew something was wrong with him, so I couldn't get physical with him. The next day, I met my new roommate